Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of PoCommunity. On this episode, we welcome Nareeta Stephenson from Strawberries and Sunshine. They're a wellness clinic helping out adults and kids with all sorts of problems because they have multiple different practices in one building. It's an amazing episode. Check it out. Nareeta, thanks for being on the show today. How's it going?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, it's awesome having you on. Tell me a little bit about yourself, your journey in Strawberries and Sunshine.
Sure. So I'm a chiropractor. I've been in practice in Port Coquitlam for almost 22 years now. I got into chiropractic because it really changed my life when I was a kid. I was a colicky baby. I had my tonsils out when I was 2, and then I had chronic ear infections. And so by the time I was 6, I'd been on a lot of antibiotics, and I wanted to put tubes in my ears. And my mom was like, no, wait, let's try something different. And so we started working with a chiropractor and a naturopath, and I didn't need surgery, and my hearing got better. So chiropractic just became part of how we did health in our house. You know, we'd go for a checkup once a month, and we'd go to the doctors when we needed to, but we didn't need to as much anymore. So always knew I wanted to go into the health field, and I always knew that I wanted to work with lots of kids because it had been so life-changing for me when I was younger. And then not long after I got into practice, I had twins, and my son, he just was totally different than his twin sister. He came out with a totally different vibration. So we had to figure out lots of different things to support him along the way. He didn't sleep very well. He needed to move all the time. I always felt like he wanted to crawl into my skin. He had to get so close. And then we got to grade 1, and he started biting kids at school. And so he'd come home and he'd just have these horrible meltdowns. He would close himself in his cupboard and he'd cry for half an hour after school in the dark every day. And at that point, I was really lost as a mom and as a doctor. I didn't know how to help my own kid. We'd done lots of things to support him, but I always felt like I was missing something. And so here I was in full-time practice with this little practice in Port Coquitlam, and I happened to do some pediatric training when he was going through that, and came across a whole different field of support for him, and it was called sensory integration. And so this was like 12 years ago. Nobody was talking about sensory processing disorder back then, but I sat in this particular class, and the teacher described my kid. So she invited me to bring him in, and we did some tests on him, and I got some exercises to do with him when we went home, and did the exercises, and within 6 months, he was a totally different child. It was like his nervous system regulated for the first time in his life. So I quickly realized that there was lots of kids like Jared and lots of moms like me who felt hopeless in how to help their kids. And so Strawberries and Sunshine evolved around my journey with him. So we've got a team of about 18 different practitioners. We specialize in helping kids with neurodivergent needs and their families. We work with lots of babies and pregnant moms, and we're basically a one-stop shop for the whole family with a focus on neurodivergence.
Well, that's amazing.
Sorry, that was a long blurb, but
that's amazing. I mean, anything to do with just children with issues, like we can go into detail about in the past how it was all one way for every child, and they, like, if they weren't like processing that well, it's like failing grades and
right.
stuff. And we've grown finally, so it's awesome for businesses like yours that are doing this for children, because not just children, adults, we all learn differently. We all process things differently.
Yeah.
So having these programs for children and seeing how it affected your own son and being able to do that for other people must feel amazing.
Yeah, I was really blessed when he was little because I had a couple of other moms around me too whose kids had different struggles. And one of the things that we noticed was that their struggles were kind of the same in some ways. You know, they don't fit our school system, they don't fit our medical system, and they need this extra level of support. And there was nothing really available to help me as a mom figure out what was going to best support him. And so that's what we try and do at Strawberries, is offer as many services as we can under one roof, because, you know, I got tired of driving him around to 8 different places for all the different therapies that he needed and doing all the things. And so it made our life easier to have everything in-house and one stop.
Like you were talking about when you were a child, and how chiropractic helped you. And you know, a lot of people don't think about children when they think about chiropractic. They think about you're getting older, back pain,
headaches,
typical
like stuff, yeah.
Middle-aged person that just is complaining about everyday back pain. But it's so much more than that, and that's like, was it relatively new for children when you had it done to yourself?
I don't think so. I think chiropractors have worked on children as long as they have been working on adults too. We just tend not to think about it because for most, chiropractic is about back pain. But our approach is about the nervous system. Chiropractic is about helping the nervous system regulate, and we access the nervous system through the spine. And so the spine stops working because of stress and trauma. And kids have stress and trauma too. It just looks a little bit different than it does for adults. So, whether it's a difficult birth or, learning to walk and they fall on their butt 8,000 times in a day, or, they sleep funny, or, their stress just looks different than ours, but they still have it. And they don't, walk around, they don't usually come out as babies and say, oh, mommy, my neck hurts. It affects their function, and we see it in their function before anything else. So they won't necessarily latch properly, or they'll have a difficult time sleeping, or just adjusting to being human and being outside.
Yeah, like children, if they have an issue with them, like something physical or anything that's going on with them, they don't know that that's not what everybody else is feeling at that point. So like if you're an adult and you have more back pain than a typical adult, you'll go get it fixed. But a kid, like my kid needed glasses since he was 3. Before we noticed his eyes kind of turning in, he wouldn't have known. He probably thinks that the blurry world that he's seeing is the normality and what other kids are seeing. But when they get older, it gets more frustrating. And it's so. How young are you? Like?
Oh, that's a great question. The youngest baby I've ever adjusted was 3 hours old.
Wow.
So there's never an end. My oldest patient actually is 93. So everybody that's got a spine really needs to be checked, and there's something we can do for everybody. But what you're saying about I think adults feel that way too. We don't know what's possible until something's different, right? So a lot of people will say to me after, "Oh, I can't believe I put up with that issue for so long," but because I didn't know that it could be any other way. I just thought that was normal. And I think there's a real difference between what's normal and what's natural, and then the optimum way that our bodies can function. And so there's lots of things we can do to help us reach that optimal functioning level. We just don't necessarily see those pieces all the time.
So when you guys first started, you said 22 years now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It was it mostly like, was it for everybody? Was it like generalized towards kids still?
Yeah, no, I really just thought I would have a family practice, and mom and dad and the kids would come in and we'd work on everybody, and then they'd go home, and just chiropractic, because that was what I was most passionate about. And their chiropractic's not the only answer for everybody. We really do need a health team. And also too, our scope of practice in British Columbia as chiropractors is a little bit narrow. So there's a lot of things that we're not allowed to do that chiropractors are allowed to do in other places in the world. So having a team we're such a collaborative approach. So we've got a naturopath, and we've got RMTs, and we've got an occupational therapist, and we all work together to help the families with whatever they need. So,
well, just like talking to you for this little bit of time already, like I already can tell the passion behind what you do and the story that you come from, like how it affected you personally. But like, just in your industry, the amount of great people that are in it. There could be the little percentage of people that are not doing it correctly that could put one visit to a chiropractor that doesn't do their services well can turn to somebody against it forever. But now I think with like things like what we're doing here, this podcast, and getting to know the people personally behind it, seeing that it's not just like to some people a cash grab, because I've gone to chiropractors before that you're in and out in 2 minutes and you feel like nothing's happened, and you feel like you just like gave money over and nothing's happened. But then I see stories like yours where it's just like, because you know how positive it's done for you, that's your ultimate goal for your patient. It's like I've seen it in other industries too, where it's like you do the little amount of work so the person keeps coming back, but I can tell by you want to fix the person.
Yeah, and it's about looking at the whole person and not just the parts that hurt. And one of the things I love about chiropractic is there's so many different ways to do the same thing. It's my job to find the technique that's going to help your body the best. And if I don't have the right technique for you, then I'm going to refer you somewhere else, or I'm going to get somebody else involved in the conversation to help you get the best results, or to help the family get the best results.
How much has this industry like grown in the past like 10, 20 years?
I think in the last probably 5-10 years, there's a huge interest in self-healing and the body is this amazing healing machine, and there's so much that we can do to support it. And so the trend towards wellness and prevention, I think, has grown a lot in the last few years, especially. And I think we need to have more of those conversations, because there is a lot that we can do to prevent injury and prevent and slow down aging. And I mean, we're all going to age, but you can help your body do it in a comfortable way. It doesn't have to be painful or restrictive, or we don't have to feel old every time we get up in the morning.
Yeah, does a lot of your does your practice have a lot, like, do they deal with mental health as well? Like, 'cause that's a huge part of physical health as well. Like, your mental state go hand in hand with your physical state, because you can think yourself like sick, you can think yourself hurt. I seen it, like it can happen. So how much does your practice deal with mental health as
Actually, that's a great question. We have a whole team of counselors as well, and they all have different areas of interest and specialties in practice. We've got a wonderful lady that does reflexology and Reiki and some energy work as well, and so she's an important, valuable part of a team, because we really are whole people. And like, with going back to the kids again, if Johnny goes home and eats red food dye, then, or is sensitive to sugar, then he's going to still have hyperactive tendencies. And so nutrition, talking mental health, parenting support, counseling, all of those pieces play into how families can be healthier and have the best life.
Yeah, like you said, you offer so many different styles of help, like essentially helping these people out, because it doesn't, everything works on everybody, right? Like you could have two people come in for the same thing, but you're going to deal with them differently, right? Like what besides chiropractic work, you guys are doing massage therapy too as well?
Yep.
What other kinds of like physical
what other kind of modalities, therapies do we offer? Actually, we have so many, but the main ones are chiropractic, massage therapy. We have an acupuncturist and TCM doctor, a naturopath, occupational therapy, Reiki, reflexology, counseling. I think that's most of it. We have a class 4 laser, which is good for pain and sprains and strains and things like that.
They're taking the best of both, like traditional and modern medicines, and kind of collaborating, because like I said many times during this podcast, not everything works for everybody. Acupuncture being one, I've heard like amazing success stories, and I've had people literally tell me they didn't notice any difference, but I've heard of it stopping people needing surgeries.
Yes.
And all these different huge success stories. So it's amazing that you're offering all of them, because literally if you take 10 people in one room and they all have the same issue, what helped each one of those people is going to be different. Completely different, right?
I think a lot of parents will come in looking for the magic silver bullet that's going to help their kid. And the truth is there is no one thing, and there is no cookie cutter approach that works for everybody. And sometimes it is a little bit of trial and error. You have to see, is their body going to respond? What are the stressors at home? And then there's a lot of things in the environment that we don't have any control over. So, how the body responds is up to the individual person. We're not actually in charge of that. So.
Yeah. How is it? That's like a question to ask. Actually, is how is it dealing with parents with these children with these issues? Because as we know, I'm a parent. You are protective as hell of your kid. You never want to see your kid suffering ever. So if things aren't done instantaneously, parents are going to be really impatient. That's just, it's you're showing your kid everything that you don't want them to be impatient about. You're showing the impatience in front of them, because it's just, you never want to see your kid in that pain.
That's
so
true, yeah.
How is dealing with those parents that are highly stressed? That they're highly stressed. It's a stressful time raising a family. In general, especially now, it's crazy times, but like, how is it dealing with these parents?
Yeah, well, education is a big part of what we do too. So, I look at it as our job is to give people information as well, and they get to decide what to do with it. So all we can do is present the information that we have, and then people take that information away and decide what fits with their values and decide what they believe about health, and then we go from there. And we work as a team to do that. So, we do have a saying around the clinic that, no child ever means to misbehave. No child means to behave badly. And I think the same is true for adults too. So we always come to those conversations with respect and understanding and empathy, because, you know, I've been there as a mom, so I totally understand when I sit knee to knee with another family, you know, what it's like to feel that hopelessness and want your kid to feel better. But everything in the body takes time. We take time to end up the way we are, and then it takes time for that healing process as well. So when people understand how it's working and what we're actually trying to achieve, then it goes better usually, I find.
You said earlier that you dealt with a 3-hour-old. Like, what was, like, can't really talk about the confidentiality with patients and everything, but like that, dealing with a child that small, how was that stressful for you? Like,
no, I love that the most, actually, because it only takes such small pressures and it's like holding onto a little tomato and testing the ripeness of the tomato. That's the most amount of pressure that I use when I'm adjusting a baby. But the impact for that child can be so profound. You know, if you think about it, if birth was very stressful and, you know, we have to do 120-degree turn to get out of the birth canal. So even if a baby comes out totally hands off, that's a lot of pressure that goes through that little spine. And so if they can't eat properly or latch properly, then that whole relationship with mom, everything gets more stressful from that point on. So by just touching their neck very lightly and adjusting them and helping take the stress off that little nervous system, that has the potential to change everything in that child's life and their development from that point forward.
Butterfly effect.
Yeah. But I do remember the first time in school when I held an adult neck in my hands, and I was terrified that I was going to hurt somebody. But, you know, there's a reason why we have, you know, 4 to 8 years worth of training, and, you know, learning to adjust spines is not the first thing we get to do. We have to learn all the anatomy and the background and stuff before that. So
yeah, I can imagine it's scary because, like, all those action kung fu movies in the past,
it's not like the movies, I promise you.
Yeah, it's just always like, how do they break their necks like that? But then when a chiropractor does it, it's completely fine.
Completely different.
Yeah, but
we actually have one of our docs in the office. She doesn't do any manual manipulation at all. She uses a device called the activator, and that's her preferred technique, and she gets really good results, and there's no cracking or noises or anything involved with that. So
because I've done spinal decompression before for myself, and that's kind of the same thing. You didn't notice the change while it was happening, but then if you kept on going to these different appointments, and I did notice a difference. I'm like, oh, is this really doing anything? And it's that slow kind of method of fixing. But as soon as I quit going because my benefits were up, seemed like I just went back to square one. Yeah. But yeah, like, is there any success stories that like just stick out to you that like a person went from like almost like unbearable pain to a point where like it's completely normal, natural life now, where like the biggest success story you've had?
Well, I like to talk about my son. I think he's probably my favorite one, obviously.
Yeah.
He's now going to be 20 in next week, and he goes to university. He's at the University of Victoria, and I think there was a part of me that thought that he was going to live at home forever at one point. And now to see him an independent young person and making his way in the world it's so rewarding. And, you know, it's not that his sensory sensitivities went away. We still could probably label him ADHD, but he knows how to support himself. He knows, you know, if he eats junk all the time, then he has a harder time focusing in school. If he doesn't go work out, then he has a harder time focusing in school. If he, you know, he comes home and he's like, "Mom, I need an adjustment." Fantastic, lay down. Let's get you sorted. And
yeah.
He knows what his body needs, and he also knows how to help support himself to regulate now, which is what he didn't know in the past.
That's amazing. It's amazing that there's services out there for him. I mean, being his mom, that's even better, because it's and getting to know your own body. Kids don't know that about themselves yet, and it's got to be really stressful on their minds, and as they're trying to develop and just feeling the pain that they don't know how to even describe, essentially.
Well, I think too, we don't get taught really well how to tune into our bodies. You know, we get taught to eat when the bell goes at lunchtime, and, you know, put a jacket on because you're going to be cold outside. But are they really cold necessarily? And we don't get sort of, that conversation isn't there to actually tune in to check, you know, how does my body actually feel? Yeah. So I think that's a big part of what we do too, is we help kids feel more comfortable in their bodies so that then they can tune in to what's happening as well. So
I think in the past it's not just the school system, and it's just life in general. Doesn't matter what age you are. There's like expectations for each age group where it's just like, you're this age, you got to be like this. You're this age, you got to be like this. And it goes all the way up to being an adult, like grow up, right?
Yeah.
But I think there's just more services now to let people be themselves and kind of understand themselves and how to fix themselves. Because I feel like sensory has come so far in the last 10 years, and like I think there was a lot of people when like a lot of like fidget spinners and different fidgets, what are they called? They're all called fidgets.
Fidget spinners,
but when they came out, parents were like almost rolling their eyes at it, and then over time they actually saw for the kids that actually what it did for a lot of other kids, it was huge. And I think there was industries that saw obviously the dollar signs in it, but there was also just seeing how much value there is in just this industry, and how there's so many kids that are actually affected in a positive way.
Yeah.
Especially like I see younger kids, the poppets and everything. It's nice to see as having a young child that there's all these different services now that like I know I didn't have when I was a kid growing up. I had friends that you can tell are a little bit different. It's just different from the cookie cutter, this is what you got to do in school, like, and just kind of, they won't even call it rebel, but just didn't fit what the mold of what the teacher was trying to do. And then some of those kids that I know now are the most successful people I know throughout my entire life because they thought outside the box. They didn't think this way or the highway, and they discovered themselves over time. And now they're highly successful people because they know how to take care of themselves and how to they're better at knowing how they can do the best they can in life.
Absolutely, yeah. Statistically, 1 in 5 of our kids have some kind of sensory processing thing, and that's even neurotypical children. So, but I think what the difference is, like, I'm totally a sensory sensitive kid. You know, I was really sensitive to smells growing up, and my mom used to call me the bloodhound because I could smell things before anybody else could. But sounds bother me too, like sometimes ticking clocks and fans, and it's always worse when I'm more stressed or tired, right?
Yeah.
But I've learned how to deal with that, and it doesn't interfere with anything in my life. And I think that's when you need to intervene, is when it starts to interfere academically or socially with somebody's ability to be able to cope.
Yeah, it's probably recently saved so many kids from going down, I wouldn't even say wrong paths, it sounds bad, but just like kind of feeling hopeless, so they don't try anymore. And that was, tons of people I know just once a teacher had a certain idea of them or something in school, they just kind of just like, okay, well, there's no fixing this, and they would just do their own thing and not succeed in that mold. But it just seems like there's so many different opportunities now, which is absolutely amazing. And businesses like yours offering these kinds of services for kids that, like, I honestly just don't think it's been promoted enough that this is an option for parents. So I love getting these stories out here, especially that you've been around for many years in Port Coquitlam. This community, I mean, our community here just alone, it seems like every one of the entrepreneurs and business owners that we have here have kids. They all have kids, so just letting them know that you're around. I think I heard this one thing. I don't know what it would be called, if it's ADHD or not, but almost everybody has some form of it when it comes to something. So like there's something in life that will like give you, I forget how they worded it, but it makes you tick. There's certain things that everybody has that they will put them into a state of that mind frame of just like that bothers them to a point where they just can't take it anymore. Everybody has it, but some are more common everyday things that they have to deal with, like noises,
right,
and all these, like you were talking about, right?
Yeah.
So if people want to get a hold of you, where can they find you? And website, social media accounts?
Yeah, our website is www.strawberriesandsunshine.ca. And we are located on the corner of Shaughnessy and Lougheed in Port Coquitlam.
I guess a pretty big location, 18 different.
Yeah, we've got about 3,000 square feet. We're
Nice.
Above the daycare, just there across from the Safeway behind Earl's.
That's amazing. I can't compliment you enough for what you do, because I mean, these kids are the future, like honestly, and helping them out from a young age. You said before, it changes their whole trajectory of their life. Like the younger you can help them out with something so drastic, the more they can succeed throughout their entire life, and the more they just feel comfortable with themselves. And the fact that you take care of all these different things in one practice is absolutely amazing. Because yeah, that's, I think, one of the most stressful things as a parent is if your kid has one, like I would call it an issue, but one thing that they have to get solved and fixed, they have to go to 8 different places for that. Like we deal with it a little bit with my kid's eye doctor. It's just like there's specialists. There's all these, being able to have a shop that has a pretty much where if the kid has multiple issues, can be in one house. You can have multiple appointments in, I don't know, one day or not, but if just having that is so practical and needed.
Thank you.
You saw the benefit for yourself, like that. That's as a parent, taking what you know and what you want to do and seeing how it could benefit your child, but as well as other children, because you knew that other parents that were going through the same thing. And it is stressful being a parent. It's the biggest job you can. It's business owners being one of the most stressful things you can do. Try running a business with a child.
Have kids, they said. It'll be fun, they said.
yeah. It's and you said you had twins?
Yes.
So yeah, you got hit with the double whammy all at the same time.
At the same time
that's always fun.
At the same time as being new in practice too. So I'd like to say that I had triplets because I had the business and the babies at the same time. So,
yeah, and owning a business is 24 hours a day. There's no turning it off, and that's the same with kids. So you probably weren't getting much sleep.
No, not a lot, but it's been an adventure for sure, and I wouldn't change any of it. So.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I think your passion for what you do, even before you had your son, and then his story, and being able to create a flourishing business and just such a such a good feeling for yourself to be able to create what helped you and helped your son for other people. Yeah. That's the biggest thing, and being such a service. You live in the Tri-Cities?
I don't anymore.
You don't?
I used to, but I yeah.
Yeah, it's a very close-knit community.
Yeah.
We call this show PoCommunity. Obviously, your business is in PoCo, but we try to just cover most of the Tri-Cities, and yeah, it's such a tight-knit community. So I helping families and young kids in the communities, that I really appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
That's absolutely amazing.
I did grow up in the Tri-Cities though, so I feel like I always feel like this is home. So
yeah, it's a beautiful place. It's very, like I said, it's tight-knit. It's crazy how 3 different municipalities can feel like one, kind of. And like you probably have multiple patients coming from all around the Lower Mainland to Port Coquitlam, right?
Yeah.
And but yeah, that's absolutely amazing what you do. Like I say again, I appreciate what you do, and yeah, I really hope that our viewers that are finding out about you right now either use your services or spread the word.
I love even just having conversations and chatting with parents. So, if anybody has any questions about something they might be going through with their family, reach out, because I'm more than happy to help direct or give information or support in any way that I can. Yeah,
I mean, parents are always, I think, they're always going to have questions about what their kids are going through. I mean, it seems like every few years, everything's changing so drastically. They'll bring up technology, everything. Like kids right now are the amount of stuff thrown at them.
And there is so much information available. So, how do you sort through it and make decisions that work for you and your family? So we like being that sounding board for people too. Yeah,
there's so many studies, and there's so many so many things that work for some people. It's just like you can try that won't work for the others. They'll bring that up a million times, but it's so crucial, and it's so amazing that finally there's when it comes to school, they'd have different programs for kids to learn differently. There's practices like yours for health reasons. It's definitely something that wasn't around when I was growing up. There wasn't at least special. Most kids, there was a children's hospital and everything, but it's nice to have these specific places for the youth, because I mean, saving them is saving the future.
It's gonna save the future. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Great.
I appreciate you being on the show today. It's an amazing story. It's always amazing when it's coming from personal, like a personal reason of why you became it. It wasn't just like your parents were pressuring you in high school to pick something to go to college for, and you're like, oh, you literally, since you were a young kid, wanted to be involved in this industry. So you pretty much lived your dream, right?
Yes, I did.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. And thank you all for watching the show today. It's been amazing. And definitely follow Strawberries and Sunshine on all the social medias. And make sure to subscribe to our channel and like and comment this video, because this is a great episode with Nareeta Stephenson from Strawberries and Sunshine. Have a good one.